Boy, I'm glad I didn't decide to leave the theater. I told
Oh,
you it was bad.
it was so bad my laptop stand collapsed a little bit. All right. Oh, no, other way. Yeah, there we go. Centered.
We're both tired.
It's been a day. So yeah, Decision to Leave, latest film from Park Chan-wook, director of The Handmaiden, and most notably the classic original Old Boy, which is weirdly hard to find to watch these days.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's not on any streaming service. You have to buy a physical copy.
Interesting. Wonder why.
Um, yeah, I don't know. It's very weird. You can only find the American Old Boy, which is not
Oh,
something I
yay.
recommend doing. Um,
Everyone's favorite version.
um, you know, all the love in the world to Josh Brolin, but mm,
Yeah, not his best.
um, but yeah, I I I initially had a little bit of difficulty with this movie clicking with me, but once it did, I was like, oh fuck.
Yeah,
It got me.
it's an interesting beast, because it's definitely like a Korean noir, like modern noir story
Hmm.
that definitely feels like you get the original film and the sequel. Uh,
Yeah, it's like a police procedural that's kind of two parts.
Yeah, because there's
Uh,
definitely like halfway through, I'm like, oh, I guess the movie's over because they're wrapping things up, and then it just kept going. They're like, never mind, I guess we got the other movie now.
there's a second half of this movie to go on, and it's kind of amazing, I think, how it works through that whole thing. And I don't want to spoil. I know the premise itself, as the film evolves, is kind of a spoiler, so I want to avoid getting into that.
I feel like we
Uh,
can at least discuss like the setup. Um,
well, the setup of the initial murder and not
yeah,
knowing whether or not the woman killed him, and the fact that she's a suspect, but she's acting kind of weird about it.
yeah, pretty much. Although that
Yeah,
pretty neatly covers it up. Uh, so
yeah, because like the whole thing is that you really don't know whether or not she did it, and the whole point is that he suspects her, and he really, really is investigating deep into this thing to figure out whether or not she did it. And he has this nagging feeling, even though, you know, the general evidence seems to point otherwise.
mhm.
And I won't say whether or not she actually did it, but where it goes with that, as far as the way the plot evolves, the ups and downs of it, the fact that it has like almost like twist after twist
Yeah,
where you're not
especially towards the third
expecting.
act.
Yeah,
Uh, really, like honestly, there were definitely parts where it's kind of hard to follow what's happening because it's like, wait, what?
yeah.
Especially since the director, whose name I'm gonna butcher, so I'm just gonna call him the director, is
Park
like
Chan Wook.
Park Chang-woo. Um,
Park Chan Wook.
I told you I was gonna butcher it.
Because you're rushing it. Just take a second, white guy.
I'm
Park Chan Wook.
I'm too tired for this discussion today. We're gonna move on. Anyway, because like every now and again he'll just throw like a camera trick or like a narrative choice or just
Yeah,
like suddenly he's like they kind of did like a Hannibal at one point where he just imagined himself in the crime scene. He's like just there all of a sudden. He's like, wait, what?
yeah,
It's kind of jarring the first time it happens. There's nothing leading up to that. It just
yeah. And you're like,
happens.
wait, what's happening? And like, there's one point where he's staking her house, and then or staking the house of this old lady she takes care of,
Yeah,
and it kind of transports him into the house as watching her. And I
yeah,
just really like these stylistic elements that they've brought into the movie because this dude has been doing these cool, weird camera tricks his whole career. And it's really interesting to have followed him all this time. I saw Old Boy in theaters when it was in limited release over here. So I've
nice.
been following his work for quite a while. And it's really amazing to have watched his style evolve over the years, especially
Yeah.
with he's had the same cinematographer for a lot of projects,
Oh, has he?
but it really has been the evolution of his craft over the course of the past 20 years. And seeing that it's still intact, seeing that he's so confident but also still really experimental, because the things that he does in this movie with editing and transitions and like moving into certain images are not things that he's done before. He's
Hmm.
still experimenting with new ways of doing things, but it's still very much him and his style.
Now, I'm not familiar with his filmography all that much. So, like, has he done like a kind of noir story before? Is it like old books or noir story?
I mean, he does mysteries. There are definitely weird, dark, suspenseful, mysterious elements to a lot of his movies. So in that sense, I think that you could say that he has done it, but this is the first like police procedural style thing.
Okay. Yeah, because like it definitely
Um,
feels like a leveler to those kind of old-fashioned detective movies.
yeah, yeah,
Like even down like the soundtrack has a very kind of jazzy kind of vibe to it.
yeah.
And it's
And the femme fatale that you're not sure is actually a fatale or not, and
like
like,
yeah,
yeah,
I compared it with
awesome.
Chinatown when we were talking about it off like when I first saw it yesterday. And
Yeah,
I still stand by that, although like the twist is definitely very different. Before anyone starts thinking I'm giving anything away, I'm not.
yeah,
For those who know what the twist is, I know you haven't seen it.
yeah,
But it's very similar, kind of just twisty and kind of gross in some respects. And also like I well, okay, that's where we're going with this kind
yeah.
of a vibe with an also a similar ambiguous ending. Which I'm not gonna lie, I was really, without going to spoilers, I was really like, well, that seems ineffective. Uh,
Well, it's the drama of it, right? But
yeah,
there's the whole like I want to save the full conversation for
yeah,
when we get to spoiler
for sure.
territory.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not going to be extensive, but there are a couple things I want to point out about the movie. But without giving anything away, I really think that it's important that if anyone wants to get like the full thing out of it without having to watch it multiple times, pay attention to the general metaphor of mountains and waves
Mm,
and the whole concept of oceans and waves and mountains is something that is consistently brought up throughout the film, down to little elements like the wallpaper in her apartment.
mm,
So it's one of those things where he's so good at what he's done that he's baked in these themes into different visuals throughout the movie, and it's
mm.
really fascinating to watch. But I really like this kind of toxic doomed relationship that they have going on, like this connection
Yeah,
they have. And there's a lot of really interesting elements to it that are just really romantic in a weird way, in a really fucked up kind of way.
it's definitely a twisted romance.
Yeah.
And it
I
definitely
really
leans
appreciate
into
that.
that.
Yeah. There were
Uh,
certain things about it. Like there's one guy, there's a villain that, not a villain, a criminal that he's chasing at one point where he says something that just fucking stuck with me. In case you've ever been in the kind of relationship where it's not good for you, but at the same time, it's like no one really understands why you're sticking with it.
hmm
But there's this one guy that commits a crime because his girlfriend or wife or something cheated on him.
hmm
And the thing um, he says, tell her that I said, I went through hell because of you, but without you, life is empty.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, fuck. Like, that's a little too close to home for some of my shit.
Yeah,
And
there's a couple lines in here that I was like, ooh, all right.
yeah, no, it's one of those things where the writing is that good sometimes. There is that melodramatic element to
Mm.
it, but you're able to pull these really weirdly poetic moments out of it. I fucking love that, man. It's like the more it was one of those movies where the more I thought about it, the more I liked it.
Yeah, for sure. And
And
it's
I'm really
funny
looking
because
forward to seeing it again.
oh, sorry, don't mean to interrupt you there. What was that last bit?
Oh, I was saying I'm really looking forward to seeing it
Okay.
again sometime.
It's funny because I went into this movie like I've been really down the past few weeks for a lot of reasons.
Mhm.
And I went like I had to kind of force myself to go see this because I was looking at other times like this is the only chance we have to watch this fucking thing before it leaves theaters. So I have to see it tonight if I'm going to see this.
Well,
So
I'm glad you did. Thank you for like, for context. It was one of those that was like not going to make it because Michael had been in a car accident recently, and
yeah, you can still see the bruise right there.
yeah, and I told him like if you have it in you, please make this the next movie you go see because like I really want to talk about it and I really loved it and I think it should be on our like list of movies we've watched this year. And I'm really glad you did, dude.
I'm glad I did too, and I don't regret seeing it. But I knew walking into it, it's like, you know what's gonna fucking happen is like because there is some benevolent force picking on me right now. There's gonna be a line or a few lines in me that is gonna just hit me where I live exactly right now. And sure
Sorry,
enough,
buddy.
there are like two or three, and I'm just like, son of a bitch.
Sorry, man. I mean, you know the movies that I'm into, so
I know, but it's mostly like it's not even like a general like line like this vaguely. You're like, no, it's gonna be something that's very specifically tied to
decision strike right to
like
your
bridges
fucking
and
soul.
strike. Because
Yeah.
there's a benevolent force just picking on me right now, and I was like, I know that son of a
No,
bitch is
no.
gonna force this.
Benevolent means all good. It's
Oh,
not a
sorry,
benevolent force if it's
malevolent,
picking on you. Malevolent.
malevolent.
There you go.
Fair correction. But like, sure enough, and then I was like, God damn it!
Mhm.
I knew that was gonna happen, but fine, whatever. It's still good. I like it.
But,
Um,
yeah, as far as it's a long movie.
yeah, it's like
It
two and a
feels
half, like
long, but it
like
also
two and a half
feels like it's
hours.
worth the time.
Oh, it's
It's not
definitely a
one of those
ride.
where you're like, oh, it feels like this went back way faster. No, you feel the length of this. This is like a journey. But at the same time, I feel like it wasn't like I didn't feel like it didn't earn its length, you know? I didn't
Mhm.
feel like it was arbitrarily long. It really did utilize that to have thing.
Yeah, and
And
it definitely demands your patience while it's kind of going through this like transition from like one story to the next because it does
Mhm,
definitely things like it does kind of start from scratch. It does kind of have to rebuild momentum, which is all intentional. This isn't like a criticism of the film,
mhm.
but it's also more like it's pretty much asking of the audience like, hey, like this is gonna have a good payoff. You've seen what happened before. Now here are the consequences.
Yeah.
The entire second half is like a very long epilogue. But
Well, it
in
does
a
feel like a part two because it feels
yeah,
like you could say the first half feels kind of like a prologue to the second half because
you can also
with
say
the
yeah,
way that things happen at the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half, it's almost like certain things are flipped in a certain way. Certain decisions have been made. The context has changed, and now there's this new situation which is the same but different in a weird
yeah,
way. And so now that does this extra layer of fucking with you the same way it's fucking with the main character. And I don't know, it's just so skillfully executed. It's
yeah,
so well constructed. I've never seen a noir movie quite like this before.
hmm
But I really enjoyed how this progressed.
yeah,
So
for sure.
um, as far as the technical aspect, we could talk about. I already talked about the metaphors throughout the movie, the cool transitions. The cinematography is fantastic.
Yep,
The acting is great. The soundtrack is great. Like from a technical aspect, everything about this movie is really good, and the kind of way that only an auteur that has been at it for so long
yeah,
can insist that their work has. And this nails that. Like I love things like this where it's so weird and different and confident about it, and also all of it's so good
hmm
that you don't have to sit back and be like, well, some of this works, some of this doesn't. I'm just like, yeah, this is neat. I might be dragged along for certain parts where I'm like, okay, well, what's this about? And then later I'm like, oh,
It
okay,
all pays off. It
okay,
all ties together.
yeah,
All the random elements you think aren't going to play a part in some capacity do end up coming back in some way.
yeah.
I guess except for like the young hotshot detective character who's like,
But on top of that, though, I really appreciate how even when you know things about what's going on, they only build more into you not knowing what's going to happen with other things.
that's true. Yeah,
And it's really impressive to me how every step of the way through the movie, you are still kept in suspense, even though you know everything that came before. You're like, well, that doesn't answer this question now. This is a whole nother situation because we've gone deeper into this fucking weird ass relationship.
yeah,
And I I feel like that's such a special thing for a movie to pull off.
yeah. It is very skillfully constructed. The narrative is very precise. And everything around it. And I'm a sucker for a good noir story. I'm definitely in
Mhm.
that camp. We don't get enough of those.
Oh yeah.
Which is why I'm very excited for Glass Onion next week.
Oh yeah. So
Yeah.
happy.
um, so yeah, like always happy to see movies like this, especially if I get, as you mentioned, somebody who has such a reputation for experimental filmmaking. That yeah, I had a good time with it.
Well, the cool thing is that even part of why, I still haven't seen Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. I've been putting it off for like 15 years, but like, um, even from the very beginning of his filmography, Oldboy is so legendary because it was such an exceptional film for being so early on in this guy's career.
Hmm.
Like the confidence with which he executed that whole story is amazing. And it's good to know that that wasn't a fluke
Yeah,
and that he has consistently proven himself over the years, and that even now with this movie, which I'm sure is indebted to Parasite for being popular. Like we're getting this new thing where Korean movies kind of have a potential audience in America,
yeah,
and I
right.
appreciate that the studios are at least pushing that a little bit.
Mm.
And that whole thing is the reason that we get Decision to Leave in theaters right now. But honestly, even though Parasite has more to say about larger social issues, I guess, in a lightly metaphorical sense, I prefer this kind of movie way more. Like I like this way more than something like Parasite.
And I never actually saw Parasite, so I just don't have the full context for it.
You never saw Parasite?
That's one of those ones I keep meaning to watch. I just not sat down and watch it. Mm.
Oh, I could have sworn you saw it.
No, I was happy it won because of my ex's parents at the time. I never actually watched it,
But you never saw it. Holy
but I
shit.
never actually saw it. Yeah, and
It's a
it's one of
movie
those
that
things
I'd
like
be willing to watch again. It's just not like I don't think it's as good as everybody says it is.
it's usually how the best picture noms usually go.
Yeah. And honestly, when it comes down to it, like I think part of it is because I've been watching Korean movies for the past 20 years. So
It's just whitey
for a lot of
cliche.
Americans, it was just such a different thing from anything they'd ever seen before. And I was like, this is good, but I've seen better. Like
Yeah, I can
for
understand that.
example, Bong Joon-ho's Mother, the movie Mother, is, in my mind, a way better movie. For me, that's his masterpiece. And some people say it's Memories of Murder, which was, I think, his first movie, or at least his first big movie. And I have yet to see that, but it's like Mother. I don't think Parasite is his best movie, and definitely not at the point where it's at the tip top of like cinema. But I understand why so many people liked it. I just like this more.
Fair
So
enough. And
I like a
but
good plot that does this kind of thing. And I really appreciate the characters. I also kind of fucking hated most of the characters in Parasite. Like I didn't like any of the characters really. Like it was all of them were just
yeah,
scumbags. So I had a hard time relating to that. But I definitely related to the main character in this one. I was definitely able to empathize with him and like root for him and everything. So 5 out of 5 for me. Like this is in my mind, this is a flawless movie.
I don't know if it's just stayed long enough for me to come to that conclusion yet. Because
It's
I got
fine. I have my bias on a certain level of like I fucking love this guy and this kind of directing is my jam. So I understand, but I think it deserves at least like a 9, like for the most part.
yeah,
From
like I don't know if this make my best list or not. Mostly just that's most largely a preference thing. I feel more than a critique on the quality
quality
itself.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I feel
But then again, we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
yeah.
Uh,
And
but
also,
then
I mean, I feel like that applies to my 5 out of 5 rating too.
yeah, for sure.
It's a preference thing.
Absolutely.
But the objective quality of this movie is definitely like very
Yeah,
high.
like it's everything about the pieces involved in it are masterfully done.
Yeah.
Anyway, we want to go into spoilers real quick.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I think we've said what we need to. All right, spoilers.
Spoilers.
Hey, spoiler time.
Yay.
Um, so uh the way that this movie takes the route through all of this stuff, um, and how you eventually find out. Like, I love how it does the thing where you're like, oh, she did it, and you see all these signs of why the guy thinks she did it, and he pursues it and he pursues it, and then it comes to see like, wait, so she didn't do it, but something's still bugging him, so he's obsessed with it, and they have this weird interplay going on, and you have this thing where she's like, you're not sure if she's manipulating him or not,
Yeah.
and then it gets to the point where you're like, wait a minute, oh shit, she did do it. And what that leads to in terms of the impact on his character and how that affects her,
Yeah.
and then how that goes into the second half where now she's kind of after him and he wants her to leave him the fuck alone. And they have another murder where it's like she didn't do it.
But
But
she
wait,
kind
did
of
she
did.
do it? But wait, no, she definitely intentionally moved the pieces in place so that it would happen. So indirectly, she absolutely did do it. And this whole up and down, and knowing this, how in the second half he knows this, and he moves towards her anyways. They get
Yep.
closer. And that whole scene on the cliffside where he's going to scatter the ashes. And
Okay, standing by like the mountain edge.
yeah, you really don't know if she's just going to kick his ass off the mountain.
Yeah, I was
And
also
that would have
wondering
been a
that.
poetic ending because of the first murder. But at
Yep.
the same time, like it's oh man, I so many good moments in this.
You know what's funny? As you were describing the plot to me, I for some reason my mind's like, wait a minute, this is an Ace Ventura, like this isn't a like Ace Attorney adventure, like a Phoenix Wright story.
Kind of, yeah, because when the way they construct those mysteries over there have this level of like, wait a minute, twist
Yeah,
and turn.
like exactly, because I can definitely see that whole like 138 paces, like mountain thing coming into like an Ace Attorney storyline. Like, hold it,
Right? Objection.
objection.
Um,
We have camera footage showing her leaving the apartment at so time. Her alibi is rock solid. Objection.
yeah, right. Um, but it's I found the quote. It was the wise man admires water and the kind man admires mountains,
Yeah.
right? And yet even the mountains are swept away by the currents.
Yeah.
So the idea that as you age and grow wiser, your kindness is kind of compromised. And what that represents within the film, the idea that when you see this imagery throughout the movie, there's even this thing where like I didn't notice it when I was watching it, her wallpaper, and some people are saying that they kind of look like mountains, but other people are saying they look like waves. So
Interesting.
it's like a blue dress, green dress kind of thing that now I have to go back and watch again and figure it out for myself.
Which is
Uh,
ironic because that one of the other debates in the movie is Bloom. Oh, I assume that's why he made the reference. Never mind. I'm tired. Uh,
uh, but then the very end where
yeah.
she kills herself, um, the whole idea is that when she digs that hole, the
Hmm.
imagery of that mound is like a mountain,
Yeah.
the way that they frame it. And then when the ocean currents come and wash it away,
Yeah. Mm.
like the way that this metaphor works into different elements of the movie, where the movie takes place on top of a mountain initially, the first mystery, and then the scene on the cliffside with the ashes. That's also like it's this thematic element that pops up again and again, and it's fascinating.
Yeah. Again, this is a slight tangent, but when they're doing the whole, like she digs the hole and she's sitting in the hole, and before the metaphor kicks in, I realize like, oh, it's the water comes in, the dirt comes in, and that's how it's done. Like, okay, that makes sense. I'm thinking like this is a way of doing it that takes a lot of commitment,
Yeah,
because you have to because you can just stand up. So like I feel like you kind of have to
no, I
force
know,
yourself
but that's
down.
that's another thing. There are people like it is. I mean, you hear about people killing themselves by hanging themselves from doorknobs,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
that takes commitment
Good
because
point.
you could
Good point.
literally just prop yourself up, but you really have to have made that decision at that point.
That's a valid point.
Decision,
Yeah.
the decision to leave.
Yeah.
Um, and I like how that theme is also another thing because at the very end, her taking her own life, but then earlier in the movie, she mentioned specifically her decision to leave the man, and then
Mm-hmm.
his decision to leave the district, and her decision to leave to come after him. And there are multiple points where the idea of a decision to leave pops up throughout the movie in different contexts. And that idea as a theme as well is just really fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's just a lot. I don't know how much there is in terms of deeper meanings beyond the movie, but as far as the construction of the movie itself, there is a decent amount of stuff to chew on
Mm-hmm.
to understand why the story is being told this way. And it's the
Yeah.
kind of thing that you only get from someone who has this level of confidence in telling these kinds of twisted, convoluted stories. So I God, I love this fucking movie. It's definitely making my top 10. So
Absolutely fair.
I
Um,
also haven't seen as many movies as you this year. So
uh,
eh.
to be fair, like also if I don't have much to say beyond what you just pointed out, because I feel like you praising succinctly, it's mostly because for context for everyone watching right now, I've been pretty much in consistent pain for the last 3 weeks, so my energy kind of comes and goes. Because at the same time this motherfucker happened, this hand decided to get severe carpal tunnel. Uh,
Buddy, oh,
so basically means my hands are useless. I can't do shit. And I wake up after 5 hours of sleep in severe pain because my
oh,
thumb joint starts to act up.
buddy, that's
Oh, and I
terrible.
sprained my pinky toe. I didn't even know you could do that. Uh,
What were you doing?
I was because my foot was on the brake when the
Did
accident
you,
happened.
you, oh, God, what a fucking way to, damn, dude. I was like,
So,
you overexert your toe? Like, were you lifting too many grocery bags with it? Like, how the fuck do you do that?
well,
But
it's because like I was
Jesus.
already having some weird pain in my pinky toe before the accident. I was also like starting to develop like gamer thumb in this hand before the accident. And then the accident happened, pretty sure it exacerbated both pre-existing conditions. Uh,
Well, I've actually I type for a living, so uh I looked up some repetitive stress
yep.
injury exercises. So I don't know if you've looked those up, but I can send you a few of those.
Oh, I've spent a good amount of money on like material to work on my wrist and stretch it out and do all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So I'm doing everything I can, but man, like the first few days, like literally waking up at 5 a.m. in like 9 out of 10 pain just in my fucking thumb joint. Uh,
Man, I feel like I should bring you soup with like morphine secretly mixed into it.
I
Like
would kill for that right now because like,
I'll be like, don't have the whole thing at once. No, seriously, don't.
because they gave
This
me
is
pain
three
pills,
servings
but they won't give me
minimum.
much, and it's not strong enough, so it's like doesn't do shit against the carpal tunnel. So
God.
like, god
Yeah.
damn it. So, uh,
Well,
but anyway, back to the movie. Yeah, it's really good.
yeah, highly recommended. Absolutely, absolutely just great. And even though we've spoiled a bunch of it at this point, I hope you've watched the movie before watching the
It's still worth
spoilers.
pursuing anyway, because
Absolutely.
it is still
Absolutely.
an exploration all its own.
Yeah. And it's
And
just a masterfully crafted movie. It's just a pleasure to watch.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think we should wrap up there so we can talk about Banshees.
Yeah. All
So I know
right.
I got it for like 3 more minutes, which is exactly enough time we have.
Yep.
Uh, all
Cool.
right.
All right.
So thank
But
you guys for
first,
watching.
Human Centipede.